Episode 1, The Night Watcher in Room 206. My name is Aaron Wells. I used to think working the night shift at a suburban hospital was the safest way to make a living. Not crowded, not chaotic, and especially quiet. But now, every time I walk down the long hallway to the old treatment wing where room 206 is, I feel something crawl along my spine. I still remember my first night on the job. The shift manager handed me a ring of keys, along with a remark that sounded like a joke, but his voice was so serious I didn't dare laugh. If you see the door to room 206 open at night, don't go in, just lock it. I thought he only wanted to scare the new guy, but the truth is, that very night, I saw the door to room 206 standing wide open. The night shift at this hospital is usually simple. Patrol the halls, make sure no strangers get in, and record anything unusual. The old treatment wing, where room 206 is, had been closed for years due to deterioration, but it was never torn down. From the files I'd seen, the whole floor was only used to store old equipment, and a few rooms hadn't been cleared out yet because of paperwork reasons. Room 206 was one of them. The hallway to that wing was long and dark, even though the fluorescent lights glowed faintly. The only sound was my footsteps echoing on the cold tile. As I got closer to 206, I saw clearly that the door wasn't shut. The gap revealed a thick darkness that seemed to swallow all the light outside. I slowed my pace. The air at the doorway was strangely cool, like a draft rising from a deep cellar. I told myself to follow procedure, check, close, lock, but when my hand reached for the doorknob, I noticed the first thing that made me freeze. There was a desk lamp on inside. I glanced in. A small, old room, its wall paint peeling in blotches. In the corner, a wooden desk with a dim yellow lamp, its weak glow falling over a surface cluttered with papers, and behind the desk sat a man in a white lab coat, head bent, writing something down. I thought maybe a doctor was still on duty here, but then I quickly remembered the entire old treatment wing was empty. No staff worked here anymore. I knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Sorry, are you a doctor here?" The man didn't answer. He only stopped writing, then raised his head very slowly. That's when I noticed his face was pale as paper, his eyes sunken and seemed to have no reflection. He stared at me for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. "You're new on the night shift." I nodded. My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice calm. "Why, yes. I was told this room isn't in use anymore." He lowered his gaze slightly, one thin hand resting on the file in front of him. "You'll be passing here many times. Whenever you see the door open, make sure they are asleep." I didn't get the chance to ask who they were, because the desk lamp began to flicker rapidly. Then the room plunged into total darkness. When I shone my flashlight inside, the desk was empty. No one was there anymore. I froze in the doorway. From somewhere deeper inside the dark room, I heard faint footsteps approaching, as if someone was coming toward me from the back hall. Logic told me to shut the door immediately, but a strange pull made me turn my head toward that darkness. In the thick shadows, I caught a glimmer like light reflecting off metal, placed between two faint human shapes, standing against the wall. Before I could focus, an icy gust hit my face, and the door to room 206 slammed shut on its own, the lock clicking as if someone had turned it from inside. After the door locked itself, I stood there for a few more seconds, trying to calm down. The clock read 1:14 a.m. I wrote the incident in my shift log but didn't dare mention the man in the lab coat, afraid they'd think I imagined it. Back in the security office, I could still feel the cold from the 206 doorknob lingering in my hand, so cold. It felt like the metal was frozen. The second night, I tried to avoid passing room 206, but around 1 a.m., the internal alarm system blared, red lights flashing, the PA announcing that a door in the old treatment wing was open. I had no choice but to check. The hallway lights still glowed faintly, but I noticed each bulb flickered slightly, in sync with a low electrical hum. The closer I got to 206, the weaker the light became. This time the door was open wider than the night before. Inside, there was no desk lamp, but from one corner came a faint blue light. I aimed my flashlight. The blue glow came from an old cardiac monitor, the kind I knew had been retired years ago. On the screen, a heartbeat line pulsed steadily, accompanied by slow beeps, and right beside the monitor was a hospital bed, covered in white sheets, with someone lying still. I stepped closer. The chest under the sheet rose and fell slightly with each breath. The face was hidden in shadow, but I saw the left hand hanging off the bed, a metal bracelet around the wrist, engraved with a strange symbol, 3 interlocking circles, with a vertical line like a knife in the center. As I leaned closer to examine it, the monitor suddenly let out a long, flat beep. The line on the screen went straight. Startled, I looked up. The bed was empty. The sheet perfectly smooth, as if no one had been there at all. A faint clatter came from the doorway. A figure darted across the hallway outside, moving fast. But with no sound of footsteps, I chased after it. But when I reached the end of the hall, there was nothing but silent emptiness. I went back to lock room 206. As the door closed, I noticed a scrap of paper caught in the hinge. On it, in slanted, jagged handwriting, were the words, "When the desk lamp is on, it means they're awake." I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, unwilling to leave it there. That night, I couldn't sleep. In my mind, the man's voice from the first night kept echoing, "Make sure they're asleep." I decided to investigate room 206. The next morning, I asked the old storeroom worker, the one who'd been here the longest. He looked at me for a long time, then spoke quietly. "Don't get involved in that. Room 206 used to be special. It was for special monitoring of certain patients whose records weren't in the main system. People say there used to be a group of doctors and nurses working for some secret organization." I pressed him for more about the organization, but he only shook his head. "I don't know the name. I just remember they wore a small badge, looked like 3 circles overlapping." My heart pounded. That was the exact symbol on the metal bracelet of the person in the bed last night. The third night, I started my shift more on edge than usual. In my pocket, I still carried the note. "When the desk lamp is on, it means they're awake." Around 12:30, I made a round through the new wing, all quiet. But as I neared the old treatment wing, I realized something was different. The hallway lights were brighter than usual, no flicker, and the door to room 206 was already open. The yellow desk lamp inside glowing bright. I stood a few steps away, wondering if they're awake now. Should I go in? Pages rustled inside. I leaned to look. The man in the lab coat was back, sitting behind the desk just like the first night. But this time, there were no medical files on the table. Instead, there was a thick, black, leather-bound book locked with a metal clasp. He looked at me, smiled faintly, his voice rough. "You came earlier tonight. Good. It's less dangerous." I took a breath and asked straight out, "Who are they, and why are they here?" The man gestured toward the book. "Everything you need to know is in here, but don't read it here. If you want to live, keep it somewhere with daylight." Then he pushed the book toward me. I stepped forward, my hand touching the icy cover. But at that moment, from deep inside the room, came a rapid series of electronic beeps, urgent, like an alarm. The desk lamp flickered wildly, and from the dark corners began to emerge figures. They were just solid black silhouettes without faces. But each wore a badge on the chest, 3 overlapping circles. The man spoke quickly, almost commanding. "Go. Take the book out of here now. Don't let them touch you." I snatched the book and ran. As soon as I crossed the threshold, the door to 206 slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking like a final reminder I'd barely escaped. I ran straight to the security office, heart pounding. Setting the book on the desk, I noticed faint, nearly erased words engraved on the cover. In the light, darkness only steps back. It doesn't disappear. Before I could open the clasp, the desk phone rang. A strange male voice, low and steady, came through. "You've taken something that doesn't belong to you. Put it back in room 206 before dawn, or your next night shift will be your last." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the heavy book. And one question. Was I dealing with a hospital prank, or had I stumbled into a force I couldn't begin to understand? Episode 2. The Child with No Name in the Hospital Records. I am Melissa Grant, night shift nurse at Greenridge Hospital. People often ask me, is working the night shift at a hospital scary? I always answer, only when you start to realize. Not everyone walking the hallways is a patient or staff. My story began on an autumn night when I was assigned to watch over the pediatric ward. This ward is in the East Wing, where the hallways always carry a faint smell of disinfectant, and the sound of monitors beats steadily, like the heartbeat of the entire building. The shift was quiet when I saw a little girl standing at the end of the hallway, about 8 or 9 years old. Long black hair, wearing an oversized patient gown that hung loose on her body. She was facing the wall, as if looking at something posted there. I walked closer, speaking softly. "Which room are you in?" She didn't turn around. She only answered so quietly that I had to lean close to hear. "I'm waiting." Waiting. For who? Waiting for them to sleep. Her answer sent a small chill through me, but I thought maybe she was talking about her parents or her roommate. I bent down to see her face, but she turned away. She walked quickly toward the stairwell at the end of the hall. I ran after her, but when I reached the lobby downstairs, she was gone. The next morning, I asked the head nurse about her. "Are you sure?" The pediatric ward had no new patients last night, but I saw her clearly. "There are only 7 patients here. None match your description." She opened the patient list for me to check every name. It was true, there was no little girl like the one I saw. The following night, I kept watch on purpose. Around 1 a.m., passing room 14, I looked through the small window in the door. The little girl was sitting beside a patient's bed, speaking to a boy lying there. She reached out and touched his hand, then leaned close, as if whispering something. I opened the door and stepped in, but she immediately stood up and backed into the corner. The glow from the heart monitor lit her face, but her eyes did not reflect the light. They were black and hollow, like deep pits. Confused, I asked, "What are you doing here?" She only smiled, whispering, "It's almost done," and in the blink of an eye, she was gone. The boy looked at me, lips trembling. She said, "Tomorrow, I won't have to wake up anymore." My heart pounded. The next morning, the boy was rushed to the ER from sudden cardiac arrest. Thankfully, the doctors saved him. But through the entire ordeal, he kept screaming one thing: "Don't let her touch me." After the incident in room 14, I decided to review the security camera footage. The tech team joked at first, another hospital ghost sighting, but when they played the footage from the time I entered the room, all laughter stopped. On screen, I opened the door and stepped inside, but next to the boy's bed, there was no one but me. Even the moment I appeared to talk to the little girl showed only me. Speaking into empty space, a cold wave ran through me, but what truly made my skin crawl was the last second of the video, before I turned to leave. The camera caught a faint reflection in the door glass, the shape of a little girl standing right behind me. Her head tilted to one side, eyes black and bottomless. That night, the shift was quiet until close to 2 a.m. Passing room 9, I saw the door slightly ajar. Inside, a newly admitted patient slept soundly, and in the corner, the little girl appeared again. This time, she was crouched on the floor, holding an old toy, a porcelain doll with a cracked cheek. I stepped in quietly, but she didn't look at me. She kept stroking the doll's tangled hair. I asked, "What's your name?" She stopped, looking up. On her left wrist, I saw a thin metal bracelet. It was engraved with a symbol of 3 interlocking circles, exactly like the one I'd heard about in Aaron's story of room 206 in the staff lounge. She answered, voice small as breath, "Here, no one has a name." The patient in bed let out a low moan, sweating as if in a nightmare. The heart monitor spiked wildly. I rushed to hit the call button for a doctor. When I turned back, the corner was empty. The doll lay on the floor. When I bent to pick it up, I saw a small folded paper tucked in its dress. On it, in the same jagged handwriting Aaron had shown me from a note found in 206, were the words, "When they touch you, sleep will no longer be sleep." That shift ended with the girl's image burned into my mind, and that metal bracelet, with its strange symbol, was clearly no coincidence. On the 3rd night in a row, I decided to find her deliberately. I brought the porcelain doll, hoping it would draw her out. Placing it on the table at the end of the pediatric hallway, I dimmed the lights, leaving only enough glow to see. Near 1 a.m., the hallway was so silent I could hear the clock ticking in the nurse's station. Then, soft barefoot steps echoed from the far stairwell. She appeared, exactly as I expected, still in the oversized patient gown, long black hair hiding half her face. She approached the table, lifted the doll, and whispered something to it, as if the doll could hear and reply. I stepped out from the shadows. "You can take the doll, but can you tell me where you come from?" She looked up. Her gaze was hard to describe, childlike, yet ancient. She said, "I've been here since before this hallway was built." A shiver ran through me. "Before the hospital was built," she nodded. Then she set the doll down and held out her left wrist so I could see the bracelet clearly, along with the 3 interlocking circles. There was a faint number etched into it, 206. I knew at once it was the room from Aaron's story. She continued, voice drifting like recitation. "When this hallway was still empty land, they came. They built rooms to keep the special ones, and 206 was where they kept the first." I asked, "Who are they?" She didn't answer. She only tilted her head, giving a faint smile. Then she stepped back into the shadows of the hallway and vanished before my eyes, as if melting into the air. The next morning, I went to find Aaron in the security office. I told him about the bracelet, the number 206, and the symbol on it. When I finished, he stayed silent, then opened a drawer and took out a black notebook. He'd kept it since the night he met the night guard in 206, he said. "Maybe we're seeing pieces of the same thing. And if what she said is true, this started before the hospital even existed." I didn't have time to ask more before the intercom blared. The urgent voice of another nurse rang out. "Melissa, get back to pediatrics now. A patient has gone missing." And the cameras show them following an unidentified little girl. Episode 3, The Roommate Who Talks to the Dark. I am Dylan Moore, an inpatient at the psychological treatment ward, 5th floor, Greenridge Hospital. I used to think the most dangerous thing here was losing control of myself. That was until I met Ethan, my new roommate, and the thing he talks to every night. I was admitted after a long period of insomnia and extreme stress. My room was simple. 2 beds, a small window, and an old wooden table in the middle. In the daytime, this place was quiet, but at night, the building turned into another world. Ethan appeared in my room in my second week here. Thin, tall, messy, hair, eyes always as if listening to someone calling from far away. He spoke little to me, but every night, when the hallway lights dimmed, he would sit at the edge of his bed, face toward the dark corner of the room, and whisper. The first night I heard him, Ethan's voice was low, like having a private conversation. "Yeah, I know. A lot of new people today. No, he doesn't know anything." I looked around. I was sure it was just me and Ethan, I asked. Who are you talking to? Ethan turned to me, smiled faintly, but his eyes shimmered strangely. My friend. He's been here for a long time, before this hospital even had a 5th floor. That answer reminded me of something long-term patients whispered about. The building once had a section sealed off, and the 5th floor didn't always exist the way it does now. The next night, I stayed up later to listen closely. Ethan whispered again into the dark corner. They said, "You're looking." Yeah, Melissa too. Hearing the name Melissa, I froze. That was a nurse I met when I was first admitted. I knew she worked the night shift in the pediatrics ward, completely separate from mine. I asked, "Your friend knows Melissa?" Ethan didn't answer. He only reached into the darkness, as if taking the hand of someone invisible, then pulled out a small object. When he came closer, I saw it was a thin metal bracelet, etched with 3 interlocking circles, a symbol I had already heard about far too many times from other patients. I was about to ask when Ethan tilted his head. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. He whispered, "They're walking down the hallway. If they hear us tonight, there'll be one more person who won't come back." I couldn't sleep that night, not because Ethan kept whispering into the dark, but because of the footsteps in the hallway, slow, steady, as if someone wanted me to hear. The strange thing was, the sound didn't come from the direction of the guard station or the nurse's desk. It came from the very end of the hall, where there was only a sealed wall. Around 3 in the morning, Ethan called softly, "Dylan, if you want to know the truth, come here." He was sitting on the edge of the bed, facing the dark corner. When I came closer, I could feel the temperature drop sharply. He held out his hand, as if inviting someone to sit next to him, and I saw another hand, thin, pale, gray, reaching out from the darkness, resting on Ethan's hand, a hand that didn't belong to any living person. I stepped back instinctively, heart pounding. Ethan looked at me, smiling reassuringly. "Don't be afraid. He doesn't hurt anyone, unless they ask." "They who?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if listening to someone whisper into his ear. Then he replied, "Those who wear the bracelet with 3 circles. He says this floor once had a special room. It's not on the hospital's map. Now the door is locked, but they still come and go." I immediately thought of Aaron's story about room 206 and the scrap of paper Melissa mentioned. It couldn't all be coincidence. The next night, I pretended to sleep so I could watch. Around 1 a.m., Ethan whispered again, then got up and opened the door. I quietly followed. The hallway was dim, lit only by floor lamps. Ethan walked straight toward the wall at the end of the corridor, where there should have been no door, but before my eyes, a narrow gap suddenly opened, glowing with the same yellow light Aaron had described in room 206. Ethan turned to me, speaking very softly. "This is where they keep the special ones." Then he stepped inside, vanished into the glow. The door closed instantly, leaving me alone in the freezing hallway, with no trace it had ever been there. The entire next day, I didn't see Ethan. When I asked the duty nurse, she said Ethan was in the special treatment ward, but this hospital had no such ward on any official map. That night, I prepared a small handheld mirror hidden in my coat pocket. I remembered what Aaron once said in the staff break room. Sometimes, what you can't see with your eyes shows clearly in the mirror. Exactly at 1 a.m., I slipped out of my room, made my way to the end of the 5th floor hallway. The smooth wall was still there, no sign of a door. I took a deep breath, raised the mirror in the reflection. The wall wasn't a wall, it was a dark wooden door. On the handle, the emblem of 3 interlocking circles. Golden light spilled out from the gap underneath, and I could hear whispers, many voices, layered together. I pressed my hand to the wall and froze in horror as it sank through the surface. Like touching thick fog, I stepped inside. It was a long room. Beds of old iron lined both sides, On them lay unmoving people, their wrists wearing the same metal bracelets as the little girl in pediatrics. On the wall hung name boards, but every one was crossed out or left blank. At the far end, under a yellow desk lamp, sat an old wooden desk. A man in a white coat sat there, head down, writing, exactly like Aaron's description of the night watcher in room 206. He looked up, stared straight at me. "You shouldn't be here, Dylan." I stepped back, but the door behind me was gone, faceless. Shadows began appearing around the beds, moving toward me. The night watcher's voice deepened. "They don't like outsiders knowing this place, but if you still want to see Ethan, take this." He slid toward me a small metal card, etched with 3 circles, and the numbers 503. I gripped it tightly. It was ice cold. When I looked up, the room was empty. Only me, standing, alone, in the 5th floor hallway. The door, the beds, the shadows, all gone, as if they had never existed. Episodio 4. Memories, not in the files. My name is Harper Lane. If you have ever woken up in the morning and realized you didn't know what you had done the day before, then you understand a part of my condition. Except, in my case, the gap in my memory lasted nearly 3 months. It all began when my family found me, standing lost at a suburban bus station, wearing a pale blue hospital gown. In my pocket was exactly 1 piece of paper, folded into quarters, inside written a single sentence in slanted handwriting: "Do not go back to the place of yellow light." The psychologist later diagnosed me with temporary amnesia due to trauma, but what I knew for sure was that the moment I heard anyone mention yellow light, an image would flash in my mind: a dark room, in the center a wooden table, and on the table a yellow-shaded desk lamp casting light down on a black-covered notebook. For the first 2 months, I lived like an outsider to my own life. Friends said I used to be an administrative employee at Greenridge Hospital, but the personnel records did not list my name. Even the hospital access card I found in my drawer at home could not open any doors when I tried. Then one evening, while sorting through old belongings, I found something that made my blood turn cold. A thin metal bracelet, engraved with 3 interlocked circles and the numbers 206. I didn't know when I had gotten it, but it felt like my hand had worn it for a very long time. I began having nightmares. In them, I walked down a long hallway, lined on both sides with closed wooden doors, unnumbered. At the end of the hallway stood a motionless figure in a white lab coat, hand resting on the black notebook. A yellow desk lamp shone from above, but the light was not warm. It was cold, as if it drained the warmth from my body. One day, I received a call from a husky male voice, no name given. "Harper, your memories did not disappear. They were put away. If you want them back, go to the 5th floor. Ask about room 503. I stayed silent. The 5th floor. Room 503. I didn't remember ever being there, but the number made the back of my neck go numb. "Who is this?" I asked. "Someone who was once like you, but I didn't make it in time. Don't go alone." Then the line went dead. Curious and uneasy, I went to the hospital the next day. When I asked the receptionist about room 503, they just looked at me as if I were joking. "We have no room 503. I turned to leave, but as I passed the ground floor hallway, my eyes stopped on an old photograph hanging in a glass frame, a black and white picture of the hospital in its early days. In the corner of the photo, faintly, was the image of a row of doors with the number 503 on the wall, and right in front of that door, the faint shadow of a girl in a hospital gown, long hair covering her face, looking very much like me. I could not take my eyes off the old photo. The person in the picture wore a hospital gown identical to mine. Standing in front of room 503, it felt like I was looking at myself, but a me left behind in a past I could not touch. I took a picture of the photo, zooming in on every detail. The 503 plaque tilted slightly, with a long scratch cutting through the 0. To the right of the door was an old-style wall lamp, its light spilling down just like the yellow glow in my nightmares. That night, I went to the west wing of the hospital, the area that had once been the old treatment block. It had been abandoned after the new building was constructed, most of it sealed off with temporary partitions. But I knew if room 503 had ever existed, it had to be here. I pretended to be a maintenance worker, carrying a toolbox. At the end of the 5th floor hallway, where a partition blocked the way, I found a small gap beneath the panel, just enough to peek through. A faint yellow light seeped from the other side. Even though the area had supposedly been cut off from power long ago, I went down to the 4th floor, looking for the maintenance stairs leading up into the sealed-off area. The smell of damp, dust, and a sharp, indescribable temps hit my nose. On the stairwell wall, I saw the symbol of 3 interlocked circles, painted in red, smudged as if someone had tried to erase it. On the 5th floor, I stepped into a hallway completely unlike the active sections. Dim ceiling lights, walls stained with dark patches, heavy wooden doors lined both sides. Numbers scraped off, leaving faint dents. But at the end of the hall, I saw the number 503 carved directly into the wood, faint, but still visible. The moment I touched the doorknob, the door opened silently on its own. Inside was a dark room, lit only by a yellow desk lamp on the wooden table in the center. The black notebook lay open midway through. I stepped in. The air felt thick, each step sinking into it. On the page was a list of names, but the last line was blank. Just below, in the margin, was that familiar slanted handwriting. To remember is to be found. A chill ran through me. When I looked up, I realized I was no longer in an ordinary room. The 4 walls had vanished, replaced by an endless dark hallway, and on each side stood motionless figures, all facing me. A husky male voice spoke behind me. "You have returned, Harper. But this time, are you ready to pay the price to know everything?" I turned and saw the night watchman in a white lab coat, his hand still on the notebook. The yellow light cast over his face, making his eyes look like 2 dark pits. I stood frozen. The dark hallways seemed to swallow all sound, leaving only his voice, hoarse, deep, heavy. "They let you go once, Harper, not out of kindness, but because you hadn't remembered enough. Now that you've stepped in here, you must choose." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. Choose what? The night watchman turned a page. Each time the paper flipped, flashes of images appeared, as if memories were running backward. I saw myself in a hospital gown, led into this room. I saw Ethan in the corner, whispering to a faceless shadow. I saw Melissa holding a nameless little girl, trying to hide the metal bracelet on her wrist. And in the corner, Aaron stood beside door number 206, staring straight at me, but with lifeless eyes. The night watchman spoke slowly. "Your memories were not lost. They were sealed, to keep them safe. If you want to know everything, you must take the mark." I looked at his hand. A thin metal bracelet appeared, engraved with 3 interlocked circles. The numbers 503. "What does it mean to take the mark?" I asked. "It means that once you leave this place, everything will come for you. No more hiding." I took a deep breath. I had lived 2 months in a void of memory, like a shadow of myself. The fear of being found and the fear of not knowing who I was pulled me in 2 directions. I reached out my hand. He smiled, a brief smile, but enough to chill my heart. The cold metal tightened on my wrist, and instantly, a rush of images flooded my mind. I saw the night I disappeared. 2 people in white coats led me down a dark hallway, into room 503. On the table, the notebook lay open, and my name was written. On the last blank line, the yellow light shone down, and a massive shadow from the ceiling bent low, whispering into my ear words I now remembered. "When the light goes out, we will return together." I jolted awake, finding myself standing in the 5th floor hallway. The door to room 503 closed behind me. The bracelet was still on my wrist. In my pocket was a new slip of paper, in the same slanted handwriting. "Welcome back, Harper." No, I had no doubt left. They were not only in room 206, not only on the 5th floor, but everywhere in this hospital. And now, I had been marked. Episode 5, The Sleeping Corridor Under the Basement. I am Clara Jenkins, electrical and plumbing technician at Greenridge Hospital. Unlike those who only work on patient floors, I often have to go down to the basement, where the entire electrical system, pipes, and tangled maintenance passages like a maze are hidden. Most of the basement has only dust, dampness, and the sound of pipes groaning. But there is one corridor that all technicians avoid. We call it the sleeping corridor. Number 1 says exactly why. Only that the light there is always a dull yellow, and the electrical system in that area has never broken down, because it has never been recorded on the technical map. I first learned about it when I received an order to check water pressure in Zone C. The way down was blocked by an iron door, locked with a rusted padlock. But when I touched it, the lock snapped open, falling to the floor as if someone had already unlocked it from the inside. Beyond the door was a narrow corridor, concrete walls painted pale yellow, peeling, ceiling lights spaced apart, casting a flickering glow. The old smell here was unlike any other basement area: damp paper, metal, and something like old antiseptic. I went a few meters deeper when I heard the sound of paper turning, a steady, slow rhythm. Curious, I moved toward the corner. At the end of the corridor, a room stood with its door ajar. A yellow desk lamp shone out, illuminating the shadow of someone hunched over a desk. In front of that person was a black-covered notebook. The sight made me freeze. I had once heard a few security guards joke about the night watchman with the black notebook and the yellow light. But when that person looked up, his eyes locked on me, and his voice came cold. "You came earlier than expected, Clara." I stepped back. "Sorry, I'm just checking the pipes." "No, you came because you've heard about 206, 503, and you want to know what else there is." I froze. How did he know? He closed the notebook, pushing it slightly toward me. On the cover was an embossed symbol, 3 interlocking circles. This corridor is the first place of them. Everyone who comes here carries a unique mark. I looked at my hand. On the skin of my left wrist, right where the bone protruded, was a faint round mark, as if something had been worn there for a long time. I had never noticed it before. "You have been here before, Clara, but you don't remember." His words sent a numb chill through my whole body. I stood in the doorway, hand unconsciously covering my left wrist. The night watchman remained seated, his hand resting on the notebook. The yellow desk lamp, casting a small circle of light, completely separate from the dense darkness around us. "Follow me," he said, like an order that needed no emphasis. I hesitated for a few seconds. Then my legs moved on their own, following him out of the room. We went deeper into the sleeping corridor. Our footsteps echoed, dry and hollow. On both sides of the corridor, old metal doors appeared, each with a small square glass pane the size of a palm, clouded from within. On the door frames, instead of room numbers, there were engraved symbols, circles, slashes, or spirals. "These are not patient rooms," he said. "Each one keeps something from those who were marked." I glanced through the glass of one room. In the dim light, I saw a metal bracelet on a table, engraved with the numbers 206. In the next room, on the table, was a small metal tag with the numbers 503. My heart raced. These numbers? I had heard them whispered by night shift workers, and now they were all here, in one place. We stopped before a door without a glass pane. Instead, it had a metal plate engraved with 3 interlocking circles, and at the center, a crescent-shaped scratch. The night watchman pulled an old key from his pocket, slid it into the lock. The door opened with a long creak. Inside was a small, empty room, except for a tall mirror against the wall. On its surface, it reflected the space behind me, but different. In the mirror, the sleeping corridor was darker, and at every door, a figure stood motionless, all there, heads turned toward me. "That is them in their original form," he whispered. "Each of them once left a mark here, and you have left one too." I looked at my wrist. The faint circle suddenly throbbed, burning hot. In the mirror, I saw myself wearing a dark bracelet, engraved with the number 014. I had never heard this number before. "What is 014? I asked. The night watchman did not answer. He just looked at me through the yellow light, his eyes like deep pits. "You will know, but not now. Each number is a door, and yours is still locked." Suddenly, from deep within, the corridor came, the sound of metal clanging, urgent, as if someone was dragging chains along the floor. The night watchman signaled for silence, switched off the desk lamp. Darkness swallowed the corridor, but I could still hear the chains drawing closer. He leaned close to my ear, his voice low and rough. "We must leave. If the keykeeper sees you, door 014 will open tonight, and you are not ready." We backed away from the mirror room, moving quickly toward the iron door, blocking the sleeping corridor's entrance. The dragging chains grew louder, mingling with a faint, long breath, as if someone was sniffing the air too. "Find a target." When we were near the turn, I looked back, only to catch a glimpse of a tall, abnormally bent figure, holding a ring of keys, so long it touched the ground. Each step it took made the keys clash with a chilling metallic sound. The night watchman shoved me through the iron door's gap, then locked it from inside. "Go, Clara, and don't come back unless you're ready to open 014. I wanted to ask more, but his voice was already echoing away into the dark. The corridor before me suddenly returned to normal, just an ordinary basement with damp smells and pipes hissing. When I reached the technical room, I realized my wrist was burning. The faint circle had now clearly formed 3 interlocking circles, with a tiny number 014 at the center. I touched it, and instantly, a rush of images flashed through me. A stark white room, empty. In the center stood a long table, on which dozens of black-covered notebooks were neatly stacked. The top one lay open, with a familiar slanted handwriting. "Each person keeps a key. When all open, the corridor will no longer sleep." I jolted out of that memory, but my heart was still pounding. I knew I had just seen part of 014, and that somehow I had brought it with me. In my coat pocket, I found a small metal piece, thin as a coin, engraved with 3 circles and the number 014. I didn't remember anyone giving it to me, but I was sure it wasn't there before I went down to the basement. That night, when I got home, I placed the metal piece on the table. When the room lights went out, the moonlight shone in, and the surface of the metal glowed faint yellow, exactly like the desk lamp of the night watchman. And in that moment, I heard a faint, metallic clink somewhere in the apartment, along with a whisper. The first key is in place. Episode 6. The message from a non-existent number. I am Noah Bennett. My job is internal switchboard technician for Greenridge Hospital. Simply put, I am in charge of maintaining the communication system, from landline phones to the old pagers that some departments still use. Too many people, this is just a boring job. But at Greenridge, the communication lines have a secret that no one wants to say directly. Sometimes, a number that does not exist will call in. When you pick up, you will hear a slow, long breath, and then the call ends. I used to think it was someone's prank, until one night, when I was on a late shift, I received a message on the desk pager screen. 503. Don't let the key fall. This pager cannot receive from outside the hospital, and 503 is a room number that does not exist on the new map. I sat still for a few seconds, remembering the stories the security guards used to tell about a deleted room, 503. I tried replying. Who is messaging? Just a few seconds later, the screen showed a new line. 206. The book is open. This time, my heart pounded. 206 was also a room number abandoned long ago. I had never seen these two numbers appear together. Until that night, I decided to check the system's connection log. Strangely, both messages had no sending source. The ID column was completely blank. I saved screenshots to show the manager the next day, but when I opened them again, both messages had disappeared from the machine. The next night, I brought my personal phone to take pictures if the messages appeared again. And indeed, at exactly 2:14 a.m., the pager lit up. 014, the corridor is awake. I had never heard of 014, but right after reading it, my personal phone vibrated. The incoming call displayed unknown. I picked up a voice, spoke so softly. I had to lean close. Noah, when the message appears, it means a new key has returned. You must keep the line open, otherwise, the keykeeper will find you first. I was about to ask what the keykeeper was, but the line went silent. The long tone stretched out, blending with the sound of wind as if blowing right beside my ear. I could not ignore this. Messages from 503, 206, and especially 014 appeared too close together, and they all matched the scattered stories I had heard during night shifts. I opened the hospital's technical map, tracing the cable route from the on-duty pager system down to the main switchboard room. In the diagram, I found something strange. Besides the main switchboard room on the first floor, there was an auxiliary room labeled B014 deep under the old basement, but crossed out in the new records. I decided to go down and check. The stairway to the lower basement was blocked by a sign, no entry, electrical system fault, but the door lock had been removed. I pushed the door open. The smell of damp dust and old metal rushed in, along with a strange cold draft as if from a place without ventilation. The way down twisted. Every step echoed, making it feel like someone was following behind. I reached a narrow corridor, concrete walls peeling, the tube light flickering from time to time. At the end of the corridor was a steel door marked B014. The door was ajar, just enough for me to slip inside. Inside was a small room, walls covered with old electrical cables. In the middle of the room stood a rotary dial switchboard, thick with dust. Strangely, the message indicator light on the machine still blinked faintly. I lifted the receiver and immediately heard the sound of metal clashing, exactly like keys rattling in the wind. A hoarse male voice, familiar from whispered stories, spoke. "You have found your key, Noah, but not just one." I looked down at the control desk. In the bottom drawer were 3 items: a metal plate engraved with 503, a metal bracelet engraved with 206, and a thin coin engraved with 014. I had not touched them yet when the lights in the room flickered rapidly. The sound in the receiver turned into long, dragging breaths, then a faint laugh. The voice whispered, "When the numbers gather, the corridor will awaken. You are the last one." I stepped back, but the door behind was shut tight in the foggy glass of the control panel. I saw my reflection, but my left wrist wore a bracelet marked 109. I had never heard of this number, but I sensed it was my key. I pressed my back to the wall, eyes fixed on the reflection in the foggy glass. The metal bracelet with 109 on the mirror version of my wrist seemed to glow faintly, a dull yellow light like from an old desk lamp. But when I looked down at my real wrist, it was bare. "I don't want this," I said softly, not sure who I was speaking to. The hoarse voice replied, "From everywhere. You do not get to choose." None of them got to choose. "You received a message. That means you have been called." Darkness began to spread from the 4 corners of the room, swallowing the light. When only a small ring of light remained around the control desk, I realized I was no longer in the switchboard room. I was standing in a long corridor, stained walls, sickly yellow ceiling lights casting broken patches of light, and in each patch of light, a person was standing there. I recognized them, not because I had met them before, but because of the numbers on their wrists. 206, 503, 014, and numbers I had never heard of, 412, 317. Each person stared straight at me, unblinking. A figure taller than all the rest stepped out from the end of the corridor. In its hand was a massive keyring, each step dragging with a sound of freezing metal. The keykeeper had stopped in front of me. Leaning down, its eyes solid black, reflecting no light. The voice like wind through a crack in a door. -109, the final key. When your door opens, the corridor will stay awake forever. It placed an icy metal bracelet in my hand. I did not have time to react. The bracelet had already locked tight around my left wrist. Cold spread through me. Then a flood of images struck. I saw a vast room with no ceiling, only darkness above. In the middle stood a door, twice the height of a person, carved with dense numbers and overlapping circle symbols. On the ground, all the numbered people, 206, 503, 014, 412, 317, and the first, 109, stood in a ring around the door. From inside, there was a loud pounding, steady, as if someone was trying to break out. The voice of the keykeeper rang out one last time. When the final message comes, all the keys will turn, and they will step through. I jolted awake, finding myself in the duty room. The desk pager was still lit. On the screen was the line, "All are in place." My wrist now truly bore the bracelet marked 109, and I knew, in the next episode, every door will open. Episode 7, The Awakening Hallway. I am Harper, the one whose name was once written in the black-covered notebook in room 503. The one who was marked from the night I disappeared. I once thought I was only a victim, lost in sealed memories. But now, as I look at my wrist, see the faint glow of the 503 mark, I know I am no longer alone. I received a message at 2:14 a.m. on the phone screen. No number appeared, only one line of text. All are in place. Go down to the basement. I had been waiting for this moment, but feared it too, because I knew when all the keys gathered, that door would open. The basement of Greenridge Hospital that night was unlike any other. The hallway lights flickered non-stop. Pipes echoed like metal striking metal. When I reached the entrance to the sleeping hallway, the iron door lock was already open, hanging loosely, waiting for someone to push. Inside, they were already there. Ethan, with the 206 band on his wrist. Melissa, wearing the band engraved 412. Dylan, holding 317. Clara, with 014. Noah, with 109. All eyes were fixed on me, or rather, on the number 503 on my wrist. The sound of chains dragging came from deep in the dark. The keykeeper appeared, tall, bent, holding a massive ring of keys. It stepped into the center of the circle, its voice low, yet echoing inside each of our heads. Enough. No one spoke. We only watched it move toward the end of the hallway, where the giant mirror had once stood in the numberless room. But now, in its place, stood a towering steel door, reaching the ceiling, carved with circles and numbers stacked upon one another. It turned to us. Each key, one lock. When all turn, they will return. One by one, we stepped forward, placing our wristbands or numbered tags into the matching keyholes on the door. Each time a key fit, golden light spread from the carvings, connecting the circles like veins. When I placed 503 in, the door shuddered slightly, cold. The smell of metal and something else, the damp, stale scent of time locked away, flowed out. The keykeeper lifted its ring of keys, inserted the final one into the central lock. It looked around, eyes so dark they swallowed the light. Hallway. Awaken. The sound of turning metal echoed, all at once, from every lock. The door slowly opened. Beyond it, only a darkness without end. From that darkness, dozens, no, hundreds of figures began to step out, all wearing wristbands like ours. But the numbers had been erased, left blank and smooth. The figures stepped out without footsteps. They slid across the floor. Faces turned straight toward us. But no pupils, only white mist, like fog laid over their eyes. All wore identical metal wristbands to ours, except the numbers were gone, leaving smooth surfaces that reflected the hallway's golden glow. I realized instantly they were us, but in some state where the number had been erased. Ethan 206 stepped back, but his copy was already before him, hand on his shoulder. In that moment, Ethan jerked, a short cry escaping him. The number on his wrist faded, as if being pulled out. His copy's wristband began to display 206. Clara 014 blocked her copy's hand, but the moment she touched it, she froze, her eyes emptying like the one before her. The 014 on her wrist dimmed completely. On her copies, the numbers shone clear. I felt an icy hand grip my left wrist. My copy, with the smooth, blank band, staring straight into me. It felt like someone was unlocking memories in my mind, pulling out images I never knew I kept. I saw again the first night in room 503. Saw the black-covered notebook with 3 interlocked circles. Saw myself signing it without reading the terms, and saw the keykeeper standing behind me, handing me the band. The keykeeper's voice echoed, deep and far. Numbers exist only to open doors. When they are gone, all memories, all bonds return to where they began. Noah 109 stepped forward, tense. Where it began is where. The keykeeper turned to him. From the darkness behind the door, a colossal shape emerged, dozens of arms reaching out, each holding a glowing metal band. A pair of massive, murky yellow eyes opened in the very wall, and every numbered band we had ever seen rested within its iris. "This is the marker," the keykeeper said. "I only opened the door. He is the one who put numbers on your wrists, and the one who takes them away." The giant form bent lower, its eyes sweeping over each of us. When they stopped on me, a voice like 1,000 whispers layered together filled the air. 503, middle key. Without you, the circle will not close. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The freezing grip of my copy's hand seeped deeper, touching my heart. A streak of bright gold began to link all the numbered bands, ours and the copies. It formed a tangled network, all flowing toward the giant eyes. Each band glowed brighter. The sound of turning metal came again, but this time, not to open, but to close the door, with us caught between. The golden light had bound us all into a closed ring, dot in the center. The marker lowered itself, 2 vast hands sweeping in, gathering the entire network toward its eyes. Each time a strand of light touched its gaze, I felt someone's memory vanish. Name, face, voice, all erased. Ethan collapsed, eyes empty. Melissa whispered her own name, as if trying to keep it. Noah clenched his teeth, gripping the 109 band like he feared it would fall away. Clara looked at me. Her lips moved. If the ring closes, no one. Well, remember, not even us. In that chaos, I realized these numbered bands were not just keys to open doors. They were pieces of memory imprisoned within us. If the ring broke, the memories would escape, but we would be trapped in the hallway forever, becoming part of it. The keykeeper stood outside the ring, staring at me. 503 is the middle key. The choice is yours. I looked down at the 503 on my wrist, blazing bright. It trembled, burning hot, waiting to be turned. I remembered every face I'd seen in earlier episodes. Ethan, Clara, Noah, even the ones with 412, 317, whose stories I never fully knew. If the marker took them all, they would vanish entirely, leaving nothing. If I broke the ring, at least the memories would exist somewhere, even if we would not. I drew a deep breath, raised my hand, turned the 503 backwards. The screech of tearing metal rang out. The entire golden ring flashed wildly, then burst apart. Every number tore from our wrists, becoming golden streaks, shooting into the darkness above. Beyond the hallway, the marker roared. Its eyes dimmed. Dozens of arms withdrew, and the steel door behind it slammed shut. We still stood there, but the darkness from all sides began to pour in. Cold, heavy dot. Clara smiled faintly. At least, they will remember. I was the last to see the light, before the dark swallowed me. I caught a glimpse of Greenridge Hospital, but it was no longer the same. In every hallway, every patient room, on someone's wrist, the faint gold of a new numbered band flickered. The memories we returned had found new owners, and somewhere, the keykeeper began walking again, the ring of keys rattling in the dark. Epilogue: The New Circle. 4 months after the event of the night, the hallway awakened. Greenridge Hospital still operated as usual. No one mentioned the old basement anymore, or room 503, or the numbers that had once made an entire network of people vanish. But I, or rather, a part of me, still remained here. That night, in the on-call room of the emergency ward, a new nurse named Marla was filling out patient records. She heard a faint beep from the old desk pager, a device the ward almost never used. On the screen, a line appeared. 317. The line is open. Marla frowned. This number was not in the list of patient rooms. She was about to delete the message when her cell phone vibrated. The screen read unknown. She answered. A hoarse male voice, vague as if coming from a great distance, spoke into her ear. Keep your band, and do not come back until the door opens. Marla turned toward the desk. A thin metal band lay there, as if it had been waiting all along. The number 317 engraved deep. She had never seen it before. In the hallway outside, the tube lights flickered once, then steadied. In the basement, the keykeeper was walking slowly through the darkness, his hand gently turning a new numbered ring on the chain of keys. Golden light from it brushed the wall, trembling, as if smiling. The hallway had not slept, and the game had begun again. Bun ko thich tin cash, nay kongi, chat GPT.